Hey guys, welcome to another front-end web development tutorial. In this video, we're going to be building a responsive side menu or a collapsible menu, hamburger menu, whatever you want to call it. Now, you often see things like this in frameworks like Twitter Bootstrap, but if you're not using a framework, it's really a good thing to know how to do this type of thing on your own, just using, HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript. So let's take a look at what we'll be building. This is it right here. We have a navbar. It's very, very simple, but also very clean looking. And we have our main links here. And then we have this icon. And if we click that, we get this sidebar that opens up nice and smooth. Okay, and you'll see the main content gets pushed over as well. So the main purpose of this is so when we were looking at this on a small screen, no matter how small, we can still have our navigation. And you'll see the main navigation has actually disappeared. When we get to a certain point, it'll disappear and reappear. So that's what we'll be building. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. It's not going to take too long, so let's go ahead and get started. If you're looking to host a website or a small application at an incredibly low price, check out eHost and get started for as low as $275 per month. Plans also include over $200 of extras. Click on the link in the description below for more info. Alright, so I have my Atom text editor open, and you can use whatever editor you want. Atom, Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, they're all really good choices. It doesn't really matter. And I'm also running a plugin or a package called Atom Live Server, which just opens our index.html file on my local host. And you don't have to use that. You can just open it in your file system. Alright, now I have an index.html file and a style.css file. Those are the only two files we're going to need for this project. So let's go ahead and add some structure to our HTML. Now I'm using Emmet. So Emmet is a plugin that allows you to do really fast HTML. Okay, so we can do an exclamation and then tab, and it's going to give us an entire HTML head and body document. So let's go ahead and change the title here. We'll just say responsive side menu, and then we're just going to link to our style sheet. So it's going to go to style.css. We're not using any frameworks or anything like that, so everything is from absolute scratch. Now, as far as what we'll be doing, we're going to first start with the HTML, which isn't a lot at all, and then we're going to add the tiny bit of JavaScript, and then we're going to move to the CSS, which is the meat of this project. That's where most of our time is going to be spent. Okay, now I also have the finished project open on another tab here, just so we can kind of look at this and I can let you know what we're working on. All right, so let me just open this project up in another window so I can, because I don't remember every single style and all that. But we're going to start off with just creating a nav tag here, and we're going to give this a class of navbar. Okay, and I'm just calling it navbar. I tend to use the class syntax from Bootstrap. I don't know why. I guess because I use Bootstrap so much that I just tend to be comfortable with those class names. So inside our nav here, let's just take a look at the finished product. So this whole thing is the navbar, right? And then we're going to work on this icon here, which is actually created through SVG, or Scalable Vector Graphics. Now you could use something like Font Awesome or another icon library, but I didn't want to bloat this up with any extra libraries, so this icon is simple enough to draw with SVG, so that's what we're going to do. So let's wrap this in a span. Okay, so I'm going to give this a span and give it a class of open-slide. All right, and then we need a link in here, which is just going to go nowhere, so we're going to put a number sign. All right, and then this is where we want to put our SVG element. All right, now I'm no pro at SVG, but this is pretty simple. I'm just going to paste it in here. So basically we have an SVG tag, which is available with HTML5, and then we're setting a width of 30 and a height to 30. So we're looking at this right here. This is 30 by 30. And then each one of these lines here, we're drawing with this path element. Okay, and it takes an attribute for a draw, which is a D attribute. And then we're basically saying we want this to go over 30 pixels, and then we want to we're going to give it a stroke color of white, so each line is going to be white, and then a width of 5 pixels. So each line here will be a width of 5 pixels. So if we go ahead and we save that and we look at our file, we're not going to see anything because the lines are white and so is the background. So just for now, I'm going to make these black just so we can see it, make sure that it's actually working. All right, and now you'll see we can see the icon. Okay, and like I said, this is just SVG is just one choice. I think it's nice and clean though. All right, now we're going to work on these links here, which are the main navbar links. So let's go under the span. Okay, still in the nav, but under the span. And then we're going to create a UL here, and I'm going to give this a class of navbar-nav. Again, kind of adopting the Bootstrap class names. And then let's put some LIs here with some links. Now these links aren't going to go anywhere because it's not going to be a working navigation. It's just one page. So we'll copy that. And let's do home. We'll do about, services, and contact. All right, so there's our main navigation. If we take a look, it looks really ugly because we haven't added any CSS yet. So now what we want to work on is this here, the actual slide menu that is going to pop out. So we want to go under the main nav here now, and we're going to create a div, and we're going to give this an ID of side menu, and then also a class of side nav. Now the only reason I'm giving this an ID is because we need to grab onto it from within the JavaScript. Okay, so that's all the ID is going to be used for. The class is where we'll add all the styles. So in here we're going to need a few links. We're going to need all these links as well as the close button. So let's go ahead and start with the close button. Now this isn't going to go to a specific page, so we're going to put a number sign. I'm also going to give this a class of btn-close. All right, and then as far as what goes in here, we're going to do ampersand times and then semicolon. That's going to give us that X mark. All right, then we just want to put our links in. So let's say these aren't going to actually go anywhere, but that'll be for home. I'll just copy that. So we'll do home, about, services, and contact. All right. And then the last thing we need to do as far as HTML is this main area here. So let's go under that div, and we'll create a div with the ID of main. And in here, I'm just going to put an H1, and we'll just say responsive side menu. And that's it for the HTML. So if we save that, it should look like this, which again is horrible looking, but we haven't added any CSS yet. Now before we get to the CSS, let's add our JavaScript, which is going to be very, very simple. Basically, all we want to happen is when we click on this icon, we want to run a function called open slide menu. And that's going to take care of taking the slide menu and setting the width to 250. So this width right here should be 250. And we're going to initially set it to 0 in the CSS later on. And then we also want to take this main ID here, and we want to add a margin left because we want to push it over 250. This is 250 wide, so obviously we want this to push over 250. So we're going to add a click event to the A tag right here that wraps around the SVG. So let's say on click, and we'll set that to open slide menu, which is a function. And then we're also going to add an event to the close button here. So let's say on click, and we'll set that to close side menu. Okay, so two functions. We'll go down here and create our script tags. And let's say function open slide menu. Okay, and again, we're just going to set the width of the side menu. So what we'll do is say document dot get element by ID. Okay, remember we gave it an ID of side dash menu, and then we just want to set the style. We want to set the width property equal to 250 pixels. All right, and then I'm just going to copy this, and then we're going to grab the main div, and we're going to say margin left. Yeah, margin left to 250 pixels. So that'll open it. Let's go ahead and save it. Now if I click this, you'll see that the main gets moved over because it's adding the margin. You don't see any difference here because the width is not going to change because it's not initially set to 0. We're going to do that from the CSS. Alright, so let's copy this, the whole thing, and we're going to change this to close slide menu, and then we want to set the width to 0 when we close it, and we also want to set the margin left of the main div to 0 as well. So we'll save that, and now if I click it, you'll see it gets pushed over. If we click the X, nothing happens because why? Did close side menu. Why isn't that working? Let me grab the console here. Close side menu is not defined. Oh, I said slide menu. So we just need to add an L right here. Alright, so if we open it and then we click that, you can see it goes back, and then this width gets set to 0. Okay, so that's actually it for the HTML and JavaScript. Very, very simple. I tried to make this so we did as little markup as possible. So now we're going to open up the style CSS, and this is, like I said, this is where the meat of the project is. And I'm going to be checking over to the right because I can't remember every single style, so I'm going to be looking over here as well. Alright, so let's start out with the body. And I'm just going to change the font family. We don't need to do this, but I want to make it look a little better. So we'll say Arial and Serif. Alright, and then we're also going to set the background of the body. Let's say background color. And we're going to set that to a really light gray. Alright, save that, and you can see that that's changed. So let's go ahead and add the styles for the navbar itself. So that's going to have a background or background color, and that's going to be the dark blue or the Facebook blue, which is that right there, 3B5998. We're also going to set overflow hidden, and let's set the height of the navbar to 63 pixels. Okay, there we go. Now that it's blue, we can change the icon back to white because that's how I want it. So I'm going to change triple zeros to triple Fs. Alright, and if you wanted to, for some reason, you could make these different colors. If we wanted the bottom one to be black, we could do that. Alright, so let's go back to the CSS, and then we're going to style the links in the navbar. Alright, so let's say we want links to float left. We want to display them as a block. We want the color to be it's going to be very, very light gray, so F2 3 times. And then we're going to do text align center. Okay, and then we're going to do a padding. Top and bottom is going to be 14 pixels, and right and left will be 16 pixels. Then we're going to add text decoration of none because we don't want any underlines. And then we're going to set the font size to 17 pixels. Alright, so let's save that. Now this is going to pertain to all the links, the sidebar and the main links, but we're going to target each one later on. So for the UL, by default, ULs have a padding of, I think it's 10 pixels, so we want to remove that. We're going to say navbar UL. We don't want to remove it. What we want to do is set only some padding to the top of the UL and none to the rest. So we'll add 8 pixels on the top. Oops, we got to do padding. So we'll say 8 pixels on the top and then 0 everywhere else. Alright, and that's all we're going to do for the UL. And then actually let's set list style none as well, because we don't want any bullet points. Alright, now for the link hover, let's say navbar a hover, and for that we're going to add a background color, and that's going to be a light gray, and then we're going to just set the color to black. Whoops. Alright, so now if we hover, you'll see it has the gray background and the text turns black. Alright, so now let's start to add some styles to the side navigation, or which is this right here. All right, so let's say dot, what I call it, side nav, and we're going to set the height of this to 100%. I want it to take full height. We're going to initially set the width to 0. So if I save that, you'll see that the width is now set to 0 by default. So if we open, it goes like that. Close it, goes back to 0. All right, and then we want this to stay in its place. So we're going to say position. Position is going to be fixed. And then we're going to set the Z index because we want it to be on top always. So set the Z index to 1. We're also going to position it, make sure it's in the top 0 position and the left 0 position. All right, and then let's add a background color. And the background color is going to be a black color, a little lighter than pitch black. So triple ones. And then I want the opacity, I want it to be a little bit see-through. So we're going to do 0.9. And by the way, what we're talking about here is this whole thing. Okay. Let's see what else. We're going to disable the scrolling horizontally. So we want to do overflow X, which is horizontal, and we're going to set that to hidden. And then we're going to set a padding top to, let's say, 60 pixels. And then we want to add our transition. All right, because right now, let me just save that. So right now, if I click this, it just appears and then disappears. Okay. What I want it to do is smoothly open. So we need to add a transition here. So transition, and we're going to set that to 0.5 seconds, so half a second. So now if we click it, you'll see that it's smooth. It opens nice and smooth. You can change this if you want. Let's say 1 second. It'll open a little slower, but I'm gonna keep it at a half a second. All right, so now let's style the individual links inside of the side nav. So let's say side nav A, grabbing all the A tags, and we're gonna set the padding of these to 10 pixels everywhere except for the left, which will be 30 pixels. Okay, so it's top, right, bottom, left. And let's set the text decoration to none because we do not want underlines. I don't think I've ever wanted an underline on my links. I don't know why that's the default. But let's set the font size to 22 pixels. And we're going to set the color to light gray. And we're going to make sure that these are displayed block. And let's add a transition. Transition of 0.3 seconds. So let's see what that looks like. There we go. Looks pretty good. Now when we hover over these, I want them to change just a little bit. So let's add dot side nav A hover. And we're just going to set the color. Let's see, it's initially light gray. We'll just set it to white when we hover. So you can see there's a little bit of change. Now we want to do the close button. I don't want it right here. I want it to be pushed over here. So let's say side nav. And remember, we gave the button a class of btn close. All right, so for that, we're going to set the position to absolute to its container, and we'll set the top to 0. We want it at the very top. And then from the right, we want it to go over 22 pixels. Okay, so top 0 will be around here, and then it will go from the right over 22 pixels. And let's make the font size a little bigger. We'll make it 36. And then we're just going to add a margin left here of 50 pixels. Okay, so now it's placed nice and neat. Good. All right, so next, notice that when we open this main ID here, this content, just kind of appears over, and we want it to have a transition. So we're going to go over here and say ID of main, and then we're going to add a transition. So let's say transition, which will take the margin left, and we'll set it to 0.5 or 0.5 seconds. That should work. And then let's set padding to 20 pixels. And let's set overflow to hidden. And let's set the width to 100%. Alright, so now you'll see when we open and close, it gets nicely pushed over instead of just appearing over to the right. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Let's see. Let's take care of these links right here. Why are those pushed down? So let me just go back up here. So, oh, wait a minute. What am I missing? You know what it is, guys? It's the pad. This should actually be the navbar UL. This should be margin, not padding. There we go. So now it's pushed down 8 pixels, and it should be equal on both sides vertically. All right, so that is pretty good. I think that's basically it. Now, if we were to make this smaller right now, you'll see the links are still there. So what we need to do is just add a media query down at the bottom. So we'll say at media, and then this is going to take in a parameter which is going to be the max width, and we're going to set that to 568 pixels, 568. Now what this does, if you've never worked with media queries, any styles we put inside here are only going to be in effect if it's a max width of 568. So once it gets above 568, and you can see it even has the sizes right here in Chrome, once it gets above 568, this stuff will not kick in. Okay, it won't do anything. So what I want to do is grab just these links, which is the class navbar-nav, and we want to set that to display none. Alright, so now if I go smaller, you'll see that they disappear when we get to a certain size, and the sidebar still works perfectly. Alright, now if you want to make this so it doesn't show when it's big, because there's really no other reason to other than just you know, physical aspects, because you have the same links right here. But I mean, if you wanted this to be different and always show, you could do that as well. But if you did want to hide that, what we could do, let's copy that. Let's create another media query that will be min width 568. And then remember, we wrap that icon in a span called open slide. And we're going to set that to display none. So now if I save that, you'll see it goes away. And then if we get to a certain point, there it is. Okay, when we get to 560 or less, it appears. Alright, but I'm just going to comment that out just because I do want it to show initially. Alright, so, oh, one more thing. This right here, if you don't want that to show, what we could do is add on to the body. Let's do overflow. We'll say overflow X, and we're going to set that to hidden. There we go. So that gets rid of that scroll bar. Alright, so that's it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I tried to make it as simple as possible. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Please leave a like, a comment. Whatever you can do is great. And I will see you next time.